I'll give everyone a second to hop on, but thank you so much for joining us. We are the Novel Neighbor, and tonight we are talking about I Know Your Secret, which is a brand new middle grade. It is by Daphne Benedis-Grab, and we are so excited to have Daphne tonight in conversation with Elliot Schreffer. So 1 second, give everybody a moment to hop on. And just so you know, the Novel Neighbor is a locally independently owned and operated store in Webster Groves, Missouri. And we do new books of all ages. And we also have carefully curated gifts and goodies just in time for the holiday season. So I will now bring on Daphne and Elliot and give them a little introduction, let them kick it off, because I know everybody's excited for the main show. So hello, Daphne. Hello, Elliot. Thanks for joining us tonight. So Daphne Benedis-Grab is the author of middle grade books, including Clementine for Christmas and The Angel Tree, and young adult books, including The Girl in the Wall. She earned an MFA at the New School and a school media library specialist degree from the Palmer School of Library and Information Science. She lives in New York City with her husband, kids, and cat, and she spends her days writing and being a librarian at the PS 32 in Brooklyn, which is so exciting. We're so excited to have a librarian here. And she is in conversation tonight with Elliot Schreffer, who is a New York Times bestselling author and has twice been a finalist for the National Book Award. He is also the author of novels for adults, children, and young adults. His books have been named to the NPR Best of the Year list, the ALA Best Fiction list for young adults, and the Chicago Public Library's Best of the Best. He also lives in New York City, where he reviews books for USA Today. Elliot and Daphne, thank you so much for being here with the Novel Neighbor.
Thank you so much for having me. And Elliot, thank you for coming and talking to me.
Are you kidding? I wouldn't miss it. And thank you so much, The Novel Neighbor, for hosting this conversation.
We love it. We're so excited to talk about I Know Your Secret. I'm going to hop off. You guys are the main show, and we'll see y'all towards the end for some questions from the audience. And if anybody has any, ask them in the comments.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, hi, Daphne.
Hello, Elliot.
It's probably no secret to those who have met both of us, but we go way back. Daphne and I are really good friends and also writing buddies. And you're often the first reader for my manuscript, and I think I'm often the first reader for a lot of yours. So,
yes.
I got a chance to see this book in its early stages, and it is truly a delight to now see it in final print form. So I'm going to resist the kind of writer friend urges to, give feedback. Perfection. I don't think it needs any. I am so excited to dive in and introduce this book to readers and talk to you about how you came up with this amazing story. So I was hoping, just as a starter, would you tell us what it's about and just introduce us to I Know Your Secret?
Sure. So I Know Your Secret is set in a middle school. It is set over the course of a single school day. It starts with 4 students who don't know each other at all and have nothing in common, each receiving the same email that says, "Do exactly what I say, or I will reveal your secret." And as it happens, this blackmailer found out the secrets that each of these 4 students would do pretty much anything to avoid everybody finding out what they are. So they meet up in the morning and they start getting a series of instructions from the blackmailer, each a little bit stranger and possibly a little bit riskier than the last in terms of breaking school rules. And as they scramble to follow the instructions, they are also trying to figure out who is blackmailing them and why, and what can they do to stop what is happening and to save themselves and protect their secrets.
Perfect synopsis. I feel like the book itself has a secret behind it, because you don't know who is sending these messages, how it's going to resolve. And then each of your 4 main characters, who we switch viewpoints from all 4, also has a secret. And just at dinner, I was telling my husband about what the book's premise was, and he stole this one copy I have, and I had to go to the other room right before we started to get it back so I could present it. But there is something compelling about a secret, right? And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about what it means to have characters with secrets at the heart of your book, and what that offered you as a writer, and challenges or benefits.
So it's something that I think about a fair amount. Every one of my books has issues that I'm thinking about or struggling with or contemplating just as a human being in the world. And I really like having my characters wrestle with them as a way for me to understand them more deeply. And I think this idea of a secret, of something that you feel could damage you or hurt you or change how people think about you, I think that that's often tied up with a sense of shame. Like if people found out, that it would somehow make you bad, or, make you questionable in a way that just feels so awful. And I think that what most of us tend to discover is when we share those secrets, when we shed some light on them, they stop feeling as corrosive and poisonous. And so it was interesting because coming up with the secrets for each of the four characters was such a good way to get to know them. Like, who are each of these people and what are they trying to hide? And, and why would they? Like, why would this be something that they feel like they just can't confide in anyone else, that they have to carry it alone? Because I think so much of the human experience is about not carrying things alone, about discovering that we all carry hard things, and a lot of them are the same. What is that? There's a poem where it's like, I thought only my house was on fire, but then I went to the roof and I saw everyone else's was too. Like, we all carry shames and burdens, and it's powerful to share them.
Did you find yourself coming up with the secret first and then finding the right character to house that secret? Or did you have the people first and then, like, what would be their secret?
That is such a good question. And it definitely varied from character to character. There were two characters who came to me quickly, and their secrets I had to figure out. And then the others, it was more interwoven with, like, discovering who they were, was just like, the fabric of the secret was in that already. So, yeah.
Are you, I mean, this book is takes place in a middle school and with middle school students. Like, is there some, like, having secrets plus being in middle school, is that especially profitable terrain for a book? Or like, what's the middle schooler's experience of secrets from what you can tell? And as a school librarian now, I know you teach younger kids, work with younger kids than middle school.
It's interesting though, because my fifth graders are about to be sixth graders. And so you see some of those beginnings of it. I think my personal experience of middle school was that was the time in my life when it was most essential to conform, when it was most essential not to be different and not to be weird. And I thought my family was really weird. And I tried to hide the ways that we were strange. And I tried to dress like everybody else. And I wore ghastly blue eyeshadow that my mom still laughs about because it looked so bad, but everyone was wearing it. And so I did too. But yeah, I think it's a time where it just feels very scary to feel like maybe you're different, because it puts you outside of the herd. And I wanted to be in the herd. And I know for my children, especially my daughter, it was, just feeling like that balance of, like, being herself, but also doing enough to fit in was harder in middle school than it was at other times in her life.
Yeah. When you talked about that shame vehicle for a secret, like, that is the fuel behind a secret, and that in middle school with such a need to conform, like, shame would be even stronger along with it.
Yeah, I think that's really true. Yeah.
Do you, I was hoping you'd be willing to introduce us to our four main characters, because I think something that you do so marvelously in this book is you have a really, really tense premise, right? So they've all got a secret. It's all gonna be revealed, and we have to find out who's teasing them with these secrets. But you also add these, like, really rich characterizations and kid-friendly characterizations as well. And I was hoping you might be willing to read. The beginning is just a page and a half from each character's point of view, where we get introduced to them and their lives in a very efficient way. And I was hoping you might read a couple of them, and so that we can meet a couple of your characters in the book.
I would love that.
Okay.
Okay, I can start with Owen because he's first. So that's nice and easy. Chapter 1, Sunday, 5:30 p.m., Owen. It was random that Owen even checked his email before dinner that Sunday. Usually he went straight from pickup basketball with the guys to the backyard. His stepdad, Big Rob, was still insisting it was warm enough for Sunday night barbecues, which was fine with Owen. Give him a pile of ribs soaked in Big Rob's secret Lexington sauce, and he would be happy eating outside in January. But Mom said barbecue season in upstate New York ended with the first frost, which had been that morning. So when Owen got home, Big Rob was standing next to the cold grill saying, It was more a light dusting of rain, not actual frost, while Mom countered that rain did not leave a white, icy residue. Owen figured it would be a while before the family ate anything, so he went into Mom's office to use the computer. His older sister, Jade, who was technically his stepsister, normally hogged it. But Jade was on a college tour with her mom and away for the week. So the computer was free for Owen and the project he had started during the COVID-19 shutdown. It wasn't something he had told anyone about. Right now, it was just his. But Owen was creating a graphic novel. None of his friends were into comics, drawing, or writing. And while Big Rob was enthused about most of Owen's interests, Mom and Dad were more invested in Owen's grades, which were somewhat less than great. They didn't nag him much, but Owen knew they might butt in if they realized that half the time they thought Owen was doing homework, he was actually working on his story. Owen had reached a point in the book where he needed to know a little bit more about the armor worn by samurai for when his character went back in time. He did a quick search, found some great images, and then, while they were printing, logged into his account. And that was how Owen ended up being the first of the four to see the email. So that is your first character, Owen.
Yeah. So tell us like how you came up with Owen and what he's about. We saw a lot of proof in these 2 pages, but tell us about Owen.
So in the end, all of my characters are some aspect of me. And interestingly, in this book, Owen is the one who is most like me. Owen has good intentions, but sometimes he gets waylaid. Owen really wants to get along with people, and he wants people to get along, but sometimes he just can't help putting his foot in his mouth. He's also very overexcited and enthusiastic. And this is kind of a funny thing for someone who works with young children to say, but sometimes I feel like I'm so excited about books in the library that my kids are like, wow, I can calm down a little bit. Like I get very excited about things. And so does Owen. He also doesn't have very good table manners, which is something else that we have in common.
Me too.
Yay, roll Owen.
Was Owen one of those characters where you knew the secret early on, or did you have to come up with Owen's secret?
Owen's was actually the hardest to come up with because like he was just so happy-go-lucky, and he was the second most comfortable in his own skin. And so there was less that I felt like he might feel the need to hide. And his social life hasn't gotten super complicated yet, but I did figure out a problem for Owen that felt very organic to who he was. But yeah, his was the hardest secret to come up with.
Is he our first character because he's the one that's most like you, or was it just the plot required him to be that?
It was actually really hard to think of the order to introduce the characters. And so I based it on what their reactions to the email would reveal about them. And Owen's reaction felt like the least important. So you don't see his reaction. You just see that he's the first to get it so that you know that there's an email. And then the next character, her reaction is important, but it's mostly like in her section, it's the reveal of what the email is. And then the last 2 characters whose secrets might be the most complicated, their reactions after the reader knows what the email were, those needed to come last. So that's how I decided how to do it.
Something I really loved about the structure of the book, especially in this opening, is that with each character, it's not a repetition because we get slightly deeper into the receipt of the email. We read more of the email. We know more about how it lands with the kids, and we know what might be coming up next. So it's like a variation on a theme, but with like a repetition of a theme, but with variations, and we get a little bit more of the song each time. I think it's so great.
That's a great way to put it.
Would you be willing to read another character? Gemma's up next. Do you want to read Gemma or?
You know what? If I'm going to read one more, I might read Todd, if that's okay.
That's great.
Because Todd is, the character that I probably have the most to say about. Not that I can't talk a lot about Gemma, Allie, and Owen too. But Okay, so Gemma's section ends with the title of the email, which says, I know your secret. And then 7:17 p.m. is Todd. Todd wanted to punch the computer screen. He could imagine how it would feel to put his fist through the screen, blasting that email apart. But obviously he didn't. Mom was so proud of the old desktop her boss had given her that it sat in a place of honor on the kitchen table where they ate. Todd knew Mom's boss just wanted to get rid of the computer without hassle since it was ancient. But the important thing was that Mom didn't know that. And it did still work, even though it did take up half the small table in their very small trailer. I forgot my milk, Mom said, coming out of her bedroom. She was getting ready to watch her Sunday shows. Todd quickly closed the email before she could see what was on the screen. You know how my milk helps me relax. She was wearing what she called her cozy robe, her feet in the bunny slippers Todd had gotten her for her birthday. Mom loved bunnies and wore the slippers every night. Want me to get it for you? Todd asked. He started to stand up and found he felt shaky, almost dizzy, from what he just read. No, you keep doing your work on the computer, Mom said, grabbing a teacup and saucer for her milk. It was the little touches, as she called them, that made Mom happy. That and anything involving bunnies, Todd, or chocolate. As soon as Mom was safely back in her room, Todd clicked back to the email. As he read it a second time, his fists clenched up. But punching wasn't going to help him get out of this. I know your secret. Do what I say when I say it, and I won't tell a soul. Skip even one step, and I will tell everyone. Text me at this number as soon as you read this email, and then get ready for tomorrow. It's going to be a very big day.
Indeed.
And that is Todd.
I love that you got cat bombed during
Sorry,
your...
yeah. He's interested in the book as well.
Enough human talk. Let's get to the cats. So tell us about Todd, how you came up with him and what's going on for him.
So when I was in 7th grade, there was a kid in my grade, and his family had very little money. Like, he was a kid who had just come to school and clothes that didn't fit quite right. They often weren't clean. He himself, like, he was the kid who would like give head lice to everybody else, and everyone knew, and he was just angry all the time. Like, he was always getting in fights, and he wasn't someone that I really came across. But this one day, we both got sent to the principal's office by our English teacher. I was making some fuss about the book that I felt I was super justified in. And, Todd did something that, like he shoved somebody or, punched someone in the classroom. I don't know. So we both got sent together, and we were sitting outside, and we just started talking, bonding over how like annoying the English teacher was for sending us to the principal's office. And we ended up having a pretty long conversation. And Todd was so interesting, and he was so nice, and he was just so intelligent and had so much good stuff to say. And at the time, it penetrated me a little bit, this idea that, like, why does this kid act like this in school? And he has this reputation, and like people are scared of him, or they stay away from him, or they call him dirty, and the teachers are just always so quick to get mad at him. But there's just all this to him that like I'd never seen before. And I'd been in school with him for since kindergarten. It was a small town that I grew up in, and I was too self-absorbed to spend too much time thinking about it, but it always stuck with me a little bit. And later, like when I started thinking about characters, like Todd was the first one who came to me, because he reminds me, like, I wanted to pull on what I learned about that kid, and the fact that he was angry all the time and violent a lot. And yet he had this whole other side that no one ever saw. And so I wanted to imagine a story, like, why would Todd be like this? Like, what would it be that would make him so angry and make him hide this side of himself.
Mhm.
And so because he already has hardships and challenges in his life and doesn't necessarily feel very good about himself because he's not able to express himself and no one is taking the time to find out what's going on with him, it was easy to come up with a secret for him, because I think that he carries a fair amount of shame. And I think that the kid that I knew in 7th grade did too.
Yeah, it's I think one of the things I love about your having 4 viewpoint characters who are so different is that every kid is probably going to, like, sort of like getting sorted into a house. You're going to figure out which one of these 4 is me, right? And then where do I belong? And then you'll learn about other kids. So some kids are going to enter as Todd, right? And it's going to be Gemma, the sort of put together, it girl. It's going to be the one that, like, I don't get that girl. Right?
Me neither.
Whereas for me, when I read the book, I sorted myself into the Allie house. I was like, she's into the animal shelter, like, this is Allie's my girl.
Awesome.
Whereas, like, I would learn to empathize with the other characters, but it's no matter what, everyone who reads your book is going to learn to empathize with someone out of these 4, right? Or maybe more than one.
I hope so. And I love that you said that, because I very much hope so.
Was empathy something you were thinking about as you were writing it, as on a thematic level, or kind of just in the subconscious soup?
Very, very much so. It's something I think about a lot. Well, first of all, I think about it a lot now as a librarian. I teach classes. I work with kids we have a 3K, so I work with very little kids, and they are such bunny rabbits, and then all the way up to 5th grade. And the only thing that will really get me to speak sharply in a classroom is when I witness a lack of empathy and unkindness and a student being intentionally hurtful to another. And an amazing opportunity when you're a teacher is to be able to lift up moments when a child says something hurtful to someone else, but they don't realize that they're being hurtful. So to be able to, like, roll that back and be like, hey, let's unpack this a little, and, like, let's look at how this could be hurtful. And it's all about empathy. It's about, like, showing compassion to kids and understanding that everybody has a story and everybody has reasons for the things that they do. And you might find that irritating in the moment, and that's fine. Your feelings are valid too. But the way that you treat another human is really, really important, and not judging. Not judging, oh, well, they just do this because blah, blah, blah. Like, unless you really know that story and you know it well, and even then, there's just really no judge. Also, we can understand, like, everyone has, like, different brain chemistry and different ways of understanding the world and different learning challenges and, just ways that we see things. And so one of the most exciting things that I think we can do as human beings is, like, get viewpoints from other people who see the world differently. It makes the world more interesting.
Yeah. What is your
relationship? I will also add that I was a mean girl in high school. And so, like, I'm also just, I know, like, trying to, like, do some penance for that. Like, I can just think of some really cruel things that I said. And so, yeah, I really try to lift up empathy in my book. Sorry, I just have to come clean and reveal that secret.
I appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability tonight, Daphne. I think there's an episode of 30 Rock where Liz Lemon remembers her experiences being, like, she was the loser and everyone bullied her, and then we get the flashbacks when she goes to reunion and she was the mean girl, like, the whole time, that she didn't. Everyone thinks that they're the one that was put upon, but it's totally the opposite. Like, I might have been a mean too, I think. But you have such like, you tackle empathy and sort of the ways we communicate and feelings of shame, like, throughout the book. That conversation we have, those issues, like, it deepens and complicates. And when we learn about theme as kids, like, it's like you have to, like, it's underlined and you have to, like, the theme of the book is, and you have to write it out, right? Like, as writers, we don't think of theme that way, but what is your relationship to theme in this book? Like, do you sort of pose those questions to yourself officially and you're like, this book is going to explore it, or is it more subconscious? How do you operate?
That is such a good question. And I feel like with this book, and probably every book I write, it's a mix. Like, I know that there are certain things that I want to explore, and I won't reveal some of the issues that I went into this book wanting to explore, but I was very clear on, just certain things that I wanted to be thinking about. But then when I'm finished writing and I read it, other themes will suddenly become clear, like what we were talking about before about secrets, about how feelings like shame or just being really, really worried about um, a truth coming out about you, those feelings tend to thrive when we're isolated. And so in the like there's just so much power in owning all of who you are and not, putting up a facade or pretending that everything's okay with you, or that you don't come with these things that that are a real struggle. And so I think a big theme that I realized afterwards was just how empowering it is to really begin to own and embrace and accept who you are and get to know who you are, like, because it's often through sharing things and, and admitting things that we understand ourselves more deeply. So that was a theme that I wasn't thinking about, but that ended up coming out. Like, I feel like often when I write a book, because I want to explore different issues, I end up learning more about it. I don't necessarily come up with answers or, settled that issue, but like I understand it in new and different ways. And that's
Right.
one of the things that brings me so much pleasure in writing.
I think our job as fiction writers is never to provide answers, but to come up with really cool and beautiful questions,
Oh, I
to
love that. Yes.
the reader to explore with the characters. But the moment you sense like, oh, she's actually giving me the answers too, you're like, that book's done. Like, I'm not going to be lectured to this whole time.
Totally. And generally there isn't just one answer anyway. Like, it's, the answer an individual comes up with, like, based on their own story. So yeah, absolutely.
You're talking about being connected and feeling of connectedness made me think about another question I wanted to ask her on the book, which was, I feel like you have such a handle on the way that technology works in young people's lives. I was on a panel a couple of years ago, and the panel was all 30 something and 40 something authors. And one of the teenagers was like, first of all, every single one of you in all of your books, like, underestimate how much tech influences our lives and like how much we're messaging and how often in the ways that, like, you have characters just running each other in the hallway and no, they would be, on the phone doing this work. This book, like, the tech is really, I feel like, it's so well positioned for each character. Like, even with Todd's case, right? We have the computer special for his mom, and that's why it takes up part of the kitchen table, and or someone else is, using the phone under the covers. And how do you incorporate tech into your work?
So I have the privilege of living with two teenagers. Like Allie, my children are adopted from Kazakhstan. My daughter actually just walked in from ice skating. Hi, sweet pea. And so seeing how tech is in their lives, the role that it plays, the way that they have related to it as they grow, it changes, it becomes something different. That is a big piece of it. I am also a subway commuter. So you get to see kids, on their phones, and I spy, what are they doing? And, what are the videos that they're all watching and, and looking at together. And then my son is super into computer stuff. So anytime I have anything like technical that might involve programming or hacking or, the age of a computer, he's the one that I would go to for that kind of thing. It can be a little bit alarming to discover how much he knows about hacking, but at the same time, you can also call that cybersecurity, and it is very important work in the world. So we're just going to go with that.
Or he's like, oh, I did that hack last night. Like, I just, that was easy.
Oh, I've got the whole thing. Yeah.
I love you basically using like unpaid household labor to do all your research for the books too. Yes. Although paid in tenfold through.
Yeah, other ways. There are other,
that is for sure.
Other prices exacted from the situation.
This book is in the Scholastic Book Fair, which is so awesome. It's in that, that newsprinty order form, and get your parents to write a check and seal it in the envelope and all of that. Although, as we were talking yesterday, they probably Venmo the money now. I don't know. But it's What's your, like, this book is out in the world today. What do you have planned for this universe? Is there anything that we can look forward to?
So that is a great question. And I just have to say thank you for lifting up that Scholastic Book Club. When I was a kid, but we didn't have book fairs. Like I think we just lived too far out into the country. In the country, like it wasn't a thing where I was, or maybe our school didn't have enough money. I'm not sure what the situation was, but Scholastic got us those flyers, and those were I got so excited, and I would circle all the ones that I wanted, and I would go home to my mom, and, there would be a big debate, like how much could we spend and which ones could I buy? And they were so affordable that I always ended up with like a magnificent stack. And like the box would come and the teacher would have it on her desk. It was just like all I could think about was like, when are you going to open the box? Like, when am I going to get my books?
And I just,
yeah, exactly. And I still remember like some of the books, like Nothing's Fair in Fifth Grade by Bartha Clements. Like I must have read that like a bazillion times. And I just, I got it in third grade in the Scholastic Book Club. And it still probably influences my writing to this day because I loved it so much. Yeah. So now that I'm like all excited about that, I completely forgot your other question. I'm sorry. Oh, what do I have planned for this universe?
Is this world still living in your mind? Yeah. What else?
So I do have what I think I can call a companion novel that is going to be coming out December 2022. It takes place in Snow Valley, which is where I Know Your Secret is set, but it is a new school year. It is a new set of seventh graders, and it is a new one-day crisis that these 4 seventh graders must address. But we do see glimpses of Gemma, Todd, Owen, and Allie in this new one too, like some Easter egg moments. You'll recognize the school, you'll see some of the teachers, you'll learn a little bit about the impact of the events from the year before, the events that happened in I Know Your Secret. And that book is called I Know You're Lying. And yeah, it's coming out next December, and I'm really excited about it. I'm working on edits with my amazing editor, Emily Safe at Scholastic. And awesome. Yeah, it's been great to work on with her. Everything is great to work on with her.
Well, and from your description of the next book, we now know that all 4 of our characters will survive the events of this book. They survive to make it to 8th grade. Yeah, and talk to the 7th graders later on. Actually, one of my students is writing a middle grade mystery, and he was wondering if you're allowed to have characters die in middle grade books. Is that something you consider?
That is such a good question. I really put certain things off the table immediately, and that was one of them. But then now that I'm in the library, because I started writing this book 2 years ago before I was in my library, like there's a mystery series, and it's historical fiction. And, it's set in the 1800s in England, but like there are murders all over the place in this one, and it's middle grade, and, the kids quite like it. So right. Maybe you can't have main characters, but apparently a dead body or two, at least if it's set in Old England, is acceptable.
That's why I loved Choose Your Own Adventure books when I was in 4th and 5th grade, because characters could die in Choose Your Own Adventure. Like they would
they
make
really
the wrong choice and it's over.
Pulled no punches.
Hi, welcome back, Cassie.
We're talking about silly middle grade students. Hi, how we doing?
Good, thank you.
Great. I have some audience questions, and I don't mean to end the conversation because it was so good, and I've learned so much about everything. I'm excited. Okay, so I have some questions, and Daphne, some of these are just for you. Elliot, some of these are for you as well. Daphne, starting with you, were there any secrets that you thought of that you didn't end up using in the book?
Oh, that is a really good question. Definitely. I considered all kinds of scenarios to come up with secrets that would feel age appropriate, organic to the character, bad enough that you would really want to keep them secret, but not to the point where someone was at real risk, like someone could actually get hurt, like it'd be dangerous to keep the secret. So I went through a bunch of scenarios, and one of the secrets, Gemma, my editor, helped me tweak that. Like it had some problems initially, and so we worked it so that it could be a little bit better.
Great. Question for both of you. What advice would you give to kids who would want to write a book like this or like anything else one day?
Elliot, you go first.
Oh, it was actually related. There's something I wanted to ask you about the book. So this is good. I'm glad that someone else remembered to ask this question since I forgot. But the PW, when they reviewed the book, they said that they admired that you keep the tension high in this taut whodunit. And tension, I think, is the concern that I never thought about when I was young and writing a story. I would just come up with cool things, and it would be like, and next, and next, and next, and next, right? Like, so the house is on fire, we run out, and then, oh no, there's a snowman, and he's coming after us, and then we run, like there's a school bus picks us up, and then we go to school. And tension is like what you can add on top of all those events that makes it something that you can't put down, that you keep turning the pages. So I think for young readers, I would suggest posing a question like Daphne does so perfectly in this book, but posing a question on page 1 that you need to read in order to have that question solved. So like Hunger Games works in so many ways, but I think what's so magic about it is that page 1, you're like, I don't know what the reaping is. I don't know who's going to be selected from District 13 for this event. And I don't know who's going to survive once they are selected. Like those are 3 major questions that it's really hard not to find out the answer to, right? So I think instead of just come up with cool events, but also like, can you have a page 1 question that we really need the answer to? And maybe if you're writing it's a story of like a romance between 2 people, the question is, these 2 really appealing characters, like, will they work out? Like, will they come together? That's also a source of tension. But it's the missing ingredient that often in young people's stories, when you write something, you're like, this should be more exciting. Why isn't it exciting? Often it's that tension quality that we have so much in this book.
I think that's really true. I think that is excellent advice. And I know that when I started writing, that was something that I struggled with having like each scene amp up the tension, like not keeping the tension on the same level, but like amping it up, and those questions, like dropping seeds so that you start to figure it out over the course of a story. And so I think this is excellent advice. I will give advice about characters. And I think that writing from your heart, from what you know, from what you care about, from what you wonder about, and from what you see around you produces the most interesting characters. And that's not to say like, write a character based entirely, on someone. For example, in I Know Your Secret, the principal is awful. The principal in the school where I work, PS32, is one of the most wonderful human beings that I have ever met. So just, like those 2 characters have nothing to do with each other. So, it's not like writing based on exactly who someone is. It's like some of what you might wonder about a person or what you admire about a person. Put that into a character because it makes the character feel more authentic, more organic, more layered, and more interesting. And it is more fun for you to write because you care about your character. And that's what you want your readers to do. You want them to care about the characters.
I love
that.
Daphne, I have another one for you. Will we get to meet any of these characters again in any other books?
Okay, so in the book that's coming out next year, December 22, you will see all of these characters. Some you're just going to pass them in the hallway. Others there might be a conversation or 2, mention of them. It's kind of fun. They definitely pop up. And some of the other, less well-known characters, like some of the teachers you'll see again. Yeah, I can't say anymore, but yeah, you will definitely find out where some of the people that you got to know and hopefully care about, and I Know Your Secret, where they are now.
I love that. Okay, so for both of you, why do you like writing books aimed at kids, at middle grade readers, and at young adults?
Elliot, you go first again. I've been talking so much.
Yeah.
Again, yes.
I guess there's 2 elements to my answer. One is I just became a better writer when I was writing for other people, younger people, and not people my own age. There's something that happens when I'm writing for other adults that I can't get my own ego out of the way, and I just want to like sort of show off and like just, you know, sort of impress people with the book, which is not fun for me writing and not fun for the reader reading. And when I write for younger people, I'm thinking about like, what is this 11-year-old's experience reading this book? What is the 17-year-old experience reading this book? And it forces me to get over myself and just not be a narcissist about writing and instead tell the story, right? Like, and I would, even after all these years, I need that element, that writing for young people, to help me not be a narcissist. But the other part is I mean, kids feel all the things that adults feel, and very sophisticated emotions and like complicated emotions and intense ones, but they're feeling it rawer and earlier and deeper than adults do. And we spend, in order to survive those really awful middle school years, except for the few kids who have a good time, like you learn to not feel things as deeply, right? As you walk into sixth grader and like everything is a deep emotion, and it's like too intense and you're crazed. And then you learn by ninth grade or college or when you're 30 or 43, you learn how to like keep those emotions at bay and which emotions are useful and which ones you kind of ice out and not like find ways to not feel as deeply. But writing about someone feeling the raw first version of those feelings is really compelling. And like we recognize those emotions, and we're looking at someone who isn't yet sort of alienated from them in some way. So they're feeling it even deeper. So that's another reason I like writing about young people. What about you, Daph?
I think that I agree with, I haven't tried to write adults, but I can just tell it would be very, very hard and to be authentic and to not try to be impressive or also look like I'm wise, you know, like I have wisdom to impart, which I don't think would be a good thing. But I think what you talk about with those emotions and how authentic, like just how deep and passionate they are and how fully they're felt, I find it very easy to tap into emotions like that inside myself. And it's such a pleasure to write from that place, like to tap into just something that feels very deep and complicated, but also, sorry, distraction, but also, you know, it passes. Like feelings are so intense, but you move through them when you're younger. And I also think, I mean, not that you can't when you're adult, but like I think I can get stuck on things more now, whereas I would feel something very, very deeply, and then a week later I would be feeling something else. And yeah, like that's like just one of the pleasures of it.
Those are some great answers. This is a little bit of a craft question for both of you. When you write books, do you write them chronologically in order as the scenes happen, or do you have a map and then you pick and choose the scenes that you want to write and then fit them all together at the end?
Okay, I'll go first this time. And I will say that I'm super chronological. I've never been anything but chronological. And I also write from an outline. I'm one of the very few writers I know who does. But it's really important to me to know where a story is going, to sit down and to be writing a scene, not to be writing a whole book. But I sit down and I look at my outline and I'm like, oh, okay, today X, Y, and Z happens. That's all I have to accomplish today. And I know where I'm going and I know where it's going to lead to. That said, I almost always rewrite my outline about halfway through because I discover so many things about characters and the story that I need to change. And also, I just see flaws and problems. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm never going to get there. So I'll stop and I'll rewrite it. But I always go chronologically and I always know where I'm going next.
I'm very similar. We have kind of carbon copy answers. So I outline too, and I write chronologically, but I don't outline chronologically. So I guess that's the place where my more scattered mind works. So like I'll come up with a plot element and I'll write it in the outline, but then I might come up with something that's earlier and I'll put it above it. So there's some sort of mix there, but otherwise, yeah, it's all chronological. But I think Daphne and I are, you know, we're not outliers, but the fact that we both work this way is not of the norm by any stretch. And I really admire, so as young writers in the audience, you know, I really admire people that can sort of like just follow the emotional path instead of the chronological path. Like I'm just feeling nostalgic, and so I'm going to write the nostalgic scene today, right? Or just being all over the place. Some brilliant works come out that way. So you just have to find what works for you. There's no one way.
Yes, agree. I think that's so important in writing, to not feel like there's some formula or you're doing it right or wrong. You just find what works for you and the story that you're telling.
Yeah. The one thing an outline does do is that you can never slack off without the feeling of some sort of shame, because like you could say, if you don't have an outline, you'd be like, well, I don't know what the next scene is. So I guess I can write today. I'm going to close the computer and go play PlayStation or whatever. If you have an outline, you do know what the next scene is. So you could be working, which for me, that's the only way I'm productive, is if I feel like I would feel bad if I wasn't working on this thing. So,
The pressure of it.
the benefits of shame. Yeah.
Indeed.
How do you write a
Indeed.
book? You just shame yourself into
Yeah,
it.
that's right.
When did you both start writing, and who are your influences / some of your favorite authors?
I'll go first again. So I loved writing when I was in high school. I did a lot of creative writing, and I felt then like I always wanted to grow up to be a writer. But then in college, a lot of the stuff that we studied and the creative writing classes at the time were super literary, and I knew that wasn't me. And then I also at the same time fell in love with history, so I kind of left writing for a long time. I went back to it in my early 30s when I finished a book. It was called I'm so upset. It's by a woman named Carol Goodman, and she went to the new school, and it was like set at a boarding school. I went to a boarding school, and I read the acknowledgments, and I saw that she had gone to the new school, which was just downtown from where I was living at the time. And in fact, I'm still living now. And I thought, you know what? I've always wanted to be a writer. Maybe I too should get an MFA at the new school. When I went to their website and I saw that they had an MFA in writing for children, like bells went off. I was like, I've always thought I was going to write for adults, and I could never think of stories. But like right off the bat, I could think of like 100 for kids. So I was like, this is what I'm doing. I'm getting an MFA in writing for children at the new school. And I did. And so I've been writing ever since. That was 18 years ago, which suddenly feels like a really long time.
Yeah, I loved, when I was a teenager, I loved fantasy novels. That was all I wanted to read at all times. And preferably the series would like fill 2 shelves, of like those mass market paperbacks. So a lot of sword and sorcery fantasy. And I figured no one could actually be published as a writer. So I knew it was what I wanted to do, but I didn't let myself recognize that fact. And so then I went to college, and I started working. I was working at a bank. I was a temp, and I just went out to dinner with friends, and I just said out of the blue, like, obviously we'd all be writers if we had time and money. My friends were like, no way. Like, and so that's when I realized, like, oh, I just spoke my truth, like I just assumed everyone wanted this, but no, it's maybe me. Maybe this is what I really want to do. So often when I talk to young people, I think, like, just think to yourself every once in a while, fill in the blank. If all the barriers were out of the way, I would blank. Like, know what you would put in that blank. It's useful. Like, often we forget to even acknowledge it to ourselves, what that most secret dream is. So you have to surprise yourself with it. But for me, it was writing. So then I made a serious go of it and had lots of second jobs all the time in order to pay the bills while I was working on those first books. And it took many books until I wrote one that was worthy of other people reading, to be honest. So, but every book you write, you're learning how to write a book, and you get better with each one. So it's you have to have a long-term view for this job we have.
One more audience question before we pass over into some rapid fire questions and then wrap up. Do you have archetypes of characters or types of characters that you see yourself writing over and over? Like, do you have a favorite type of character to write?
Does that question have a name attached? That feels like a writerly question.
A lot of writers.
I'll go first with a very short answer, which is just that I thought I didn't. And then I was talking with a friend, and I said, like, oh, my characters are all over the place. They're all different. And she was like, no, they're all outsiders longing to belong. Like, that's the character I turn to over and over. Like, if I don't think about it consciously, like, that is my main character, is some version of that story that they're telling. What about you, Daph?
Now I'm suddenly wondering, like, is there an archetype that I write? Like, I definitely when you have a book with multiple protagonists, like you're very conscious of like at least surface differences in how they do things. I mostly gravitate towards characters who are really struggling, who need to get to know themselves a little bit more. Coming of age, which you can come of age at any time in your life, but characters who are poised to grow and then ideally do. I don't know if that counts as an archetype. I'm going to think about that. It's a really good question.
All right. Now we just have some, shake it out. We just have some fun little rapid fire ones, and they're silly, and it'll be a good time. Oh, I did get one just now. Someone wants to know what's next for you, Elliot. What are you working on now?
Oh, for me. I have a book coming out in May. It's called Queer Ducks, and it's about the natural world of all animal sexuality, like how animals come together, and some of them are male-female couples, some of them are asexual reproduction, and just looking at how it all works in the animal kingdom. It's
Our children's buyer was sent a paper manuscript of it, and she loved it.
Oh, cool.
So I'm very excited about this duck book.
Awesome.
It is an excellent book. I have read it. It is superb. I cannot wait to get it for our library. Just going to mention that actually all of Elliot's books are completely superb. And if you haven't read them, just do yourself a favor and do so.
All right, some easy ones for both of you. What is your coffee shop order?
Always soy milk latte. I'm boring.
I like an oat cortado.
Wow. Do you prefer writing in by hand or typing?
Typing.
Typing.
What music is most on your writing playlist?
I don't listen to music.
Scandalous. I sort of like early 2000s top 40 female pop punk. I owned the Hilary Duff albums. Like it's fine.
Amazing.
Summer or winter?
Summer. I get gloomy in the winter.
I'm going to go summer as well, although I don't like those humid days.
Agreed. New York gets humid. Thrillers or fantasy?
Thrillers.
Oh, but I love fantasies, but I'm writing thrillers these days, so thrillers.
All right, last question. What are you both reading right now?
I'm reading an adult book, a thriller. I've been actually on a run of adult book thrillers. I usually read a lot more middle grade and YA, but for some reason I just hit on one really good one and then read all of that author's work. And now I'm reading The Last Thing He Said to Me, which is delicious because it's a thriller, but it's also about a stepdaughter and stepmom and their developing relationship, which is one of my favorite things. It's possibly because I'm an adoptive mom and because like I know so many different kinds of families. I love books that have different, like have families that aren't necessarily like about blood relation. They're about like other relations and other connections that we make. So I'm deeply enjoying it.
Oh, cool. The previous question got me thinking, like, are there any fantasy thrillers, and shouldn't there be? If they're not, someone get on this. I'm reading *Sapiens* right now, which was a birthday gift from my husband. It's like the natural history of the human species, and it's really fascinating. So I'm working my way through that.
That's very cool. All right. Well, Elliot and Daphne, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We had an absolute blast. Do either of you have anything to mention that didn't come up tonight?
I would just say really quickly, get this book, buy it as gifts for everyone you know. It is only $7.99, which means you can go to the Novel Neighbors website and you have a lot of money left over to buy other books. And we are so
like
lucky.
Elliot's books.
Like mine. We're so lucky that independents held on during this really rough time and are still holding on. And please go do your holiday shopping right now and include this book, but include many others from Novel Neighbors.
And I want to say thank you so much to Elliot for being in conversation with me. Thank you so much, Cassie, and everyone at Novel Neighbor. It is just such an honor to be hosted by your show on my book birthday. And a quick shout out to my publicist, Alex, who I adore, and anyone watching from PS32. You guys are an amazing community, and I'm so proud to be part of you.
Happy book birthday, Daphne. And we hope to see both of you when we are able to do in-person events again in St. Louis.
It'd be a pleasure.
It'll be wonderful,
Congratulations,
yeah.
Daphne. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you.